All right, we'll get. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Afolabi Brown, founder of Restful Sleep MD, and I am just so thrilled today. I'm always thrilled when I come on here, okay? But I'm like really thrilled today to have one of my really good friends, Dr. T, who is joining us. And I'll read a little bit about her, but you know what, Dr. T, I know I will not do it justice. So I'll have you like reintroduce yourself, but I just wanted to kind of give people like a tease. So Dr. T Nguyen is a podiatrist and she is the CEO of Pacific Point Podiatry, which is a non-traditional direct specialty care practice in Santa Cruz, California. She's fellowship trained in wound healing and is board certified in foot and ankle surgery. Dr. T helps people avoid unnecessary leg amputations with preventative foot care and minimally invasive surgery. Dr. T also helps other podiatrists start their direct care practice so they could become less dependent on declining insurance reimbursement and love medicine again. And I just love that. I love that you are paying it forward. You have this incredible practice and you're helping others to build the same. But yeah, it's really good to have you here today, Dr. T. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm so excited to be here to share the space with you. You are my favorite person. You are my favorite person right now, I have to say. Yeah, so most of that is true. So I don't know what more to add. I opened my private practice in 2018 and it's still going. And I also had my daughter at the same time. So my practice and my baby, they're the same age. They're 4 years old and growing. And I'm married to a general surgeon who is an associate, so he loves the employed life. And I wish I could say the same for myself. And so it turns out we're very different people with different goals and ambition. And it turns out that's okay too. And so it took me some time to realize that we're all just kind of different and we have the freedom to decide what our life looks like.
Yes, that is so true. And I think that's what's so beautiful because as much as we want everybody to be like us, I think it would be quite boring if we had what we wanted.
Yeah, you're totally right.
And your babies are thriving, as I know, and I could tell, and I think that's just incredible. But what motivated you to start a practice, have a baby, like at the same time, or was it coincidence? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
It was not planned, both. So, I had left my training. I did my fellowship thinking that I would be employed in an academic center. I really enjoyed that intellectual challenge. And I love being able to just learn something new and apply it and write about it and talk about it and all of those things related to academic medicine. But those opportunities never came. And we had to make a choice because my husband and I were in residency training and I finished before him. He had his training was 5 years. So he had another year after I completed my 4 years. And it really just came down to, we both got a job serendipitously in California where we're from. And I just took the job thinking, okay, this is it. I'm employed in a private practice now. But it really wasn't, that was it. I always wanted more. And I think I irritate all of my friends and colleagues all the same because I'm like, isn't there more? Isn't there more to this? And I just couldn't keep quiet. And so I came to a point where I got pregnant unplanned. And I told my employers and I said, I'm pregnant, like, I don't know what's next. And so I just anticipated to continue working for them. But then suddenly I found my surgical schedule. The surgeries I had scheduled for my patients were being canceled without me knowing. So how this works is I talked with a patient, I scheduled a surgery with them at a facility, and then, it's usually booked weeks out. And then I looked into my schedule and I saw that those surgeries that were canceled, that were on the schedule, was then canceled. And so I was like, how did this happen? Did the patient cancel or was something missed? And so I looked at it and my staff canceled those surgeries. So I asked her, I said, what's going on? Why are these cases being canceled? And she said to me, I can't talk to you about that. You need to talk to the employers. So I talked to the employers. I was like, what's going on? And they're like, well, you're pregnant. This is kind of a liability. And so we don't really want you doing surgery. And I was like, well, that's strange. Like, I didn't know being pregnant is a sickness or a limitation. And I was only a few months, at the time. So there was just this chronic friction between my schedule, my desires, and what they wanted out of me. And it just never lined up. And so I made a decision. I was like, I feel like this is not going to move forward in the way that I had anticipated. And so I had to make a plan. I was like, what's next then? Do I continue to look for another job and move out of the city that my husband had got a job in that he loved? And let me tell you, this annoys me because he loves everything. Every situation he put in, perfect. His residency, it was perfect. His job, it was perfect. And here I am, like just trying to find my place in the world. And I was like, well, we're adults now. We need to pay bills. We need to pay back our loans. And we just can't up and get out of state for a job. That doesn't make sense. But unfortunately, that's just sometimes how it is for doctors, right? And so I said, well, then what's the alternative? If there are no job opportunities, what do I do from here? And that was kind of like, that was the point. I was like, well, who's really going to give me the satisfaction that I'm looking for? So that's how I decided to open my own practice. It was because I was unemployable and I wanted to have my own schedule. And there's just no boss in the world that can ever give you those things. So I became my own boss.
That is just like incredible. I have so many things that are just running through my mind right now about what you said, which really aptly fits into what we're talking about is boundaries, right? And the reason why I really love to talk about boundaries, and when I'm even working with clients and we're talking about like how do you prioritize sleep, I start with boundaries, and it's like, wait, what? Because as professional women, regardless of our work of life, right? Regardless of where we are, we're usually either forced to make a choice, right? And many times we may try to be adaptable, try to work well with the team, try to do the best we can. But then there comes a time when we have to choose us and say, okay, what works for me? Especially when the situation doesn't seem to be in your favor. And, I love that, saying people talk about like, if you don't have a seat at the table, you build your own table. And that was exactly what you did. You built your own table. And I think that is just such a valuable lesson for our listeners. I mean, of course, you want to do this in a way that's responsible, which was what you did. You didn't just up and leave. You sat and you thought through, okay, how do we move forward? But you were able to come to that decision and say, well, this is not going to work because our values, the values I have and that of my employer doesn't line up. And you may have found another job that worked well, that's fine. But thinking really beyond the box, really prioritizing what you felt was true to you, I think it's so critical when it comes to setting the right boundaries.
Oh my gosh, I have so much to say about that entire experience because we were taught a very specific thing. There was a regimen, there is a pathway, you go training, you get a job, you get paid, you pay off your bills. But that just wasn't the path for me. And I sat in a lot of frustration because I was like, there is no job for me here. What am I supposed to do as these looming debts are just adding up? It's cumulative. The interest rate is going to go with or without a job. So you have to be practical sometimes. And I also had to compromise because I function as a very independent person, but when you're married, you're in a partnership that has to work for both people in some way, compromise. And that was not a thing I was ever taught. I've always been very independent. And so having to compromise was incredibly challenging as a working professional now with a child. And I don't think I appreciated the burden of women who had children until I became one myself. And it's incredibly hard, and it affects your self-perception of who you truly are. Because I thought I was just a podiatrist. I thought I was just a doctor, right? But suddenly I had all these roles to fulfill. And I think if we don't put boundaries, then we lose ourselves. We keep giving and we give endlessly, and then we give empty, and then what are we at the end of the day? So yeah, let's talk about boundaries, how to create.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that things that I'm hearing here, it's, the boundaries don't necessarily mean you're like selfish, because sometimes that's also sometimes the connotation that it gives in some situations, like you're only thinking about yourself. You had to set boundaries in context of family, in context of what worked for your husband, right? So I think that's just incredible. And so maybe that really segues me into my next question. Like, what are typically, for me, when I talk about boundaries, I talk about boundaries with, coworkers and community. I talk about boundaries with our families, right? And then I talk about boundaries with ourselves, because even we as women need to set boundaries with ourselves. So in your own, when you think about boundaries, what does that look like in specifically maybe in those three areas, and maybe other areas that you would consider like boundaries are what setting?
It's such a huge topic, right? We don't get
Yeah.
to learn about how to really protect yourself. And I kind
Mm.
of visual it this way. I am somebody who has a jar of energy. It's finite. And when that jar slowly empties, you have to find a way to fill it back up. It doesn't fill up on its own. It doesn't fill up with you continuing to serve others. And so with this finite energy, how do I really want to disperse that? How do I really want to spend that? It's currency. And
Mm.
as we age, that currency, gets less and less. It takes more to re-energize. It takes more to fill it up, right? It's like an old iPhone battery. It just gets worse with time. And
Yes, I
so
love that.
I just had to be really mindful about, okay, today I have this amount of energy. How do I want to spend it? And sometimes I do really well. And other times, I let it go. I forget that I need to prioritize what the day looks like. So in my job, as I'm trying to balance my new private practice, my daughter, and then, my husband's needs, and then myself, I had to figure out like, what was number one? No, number one, like just on a piece of paper, what was number one? And for me, number one was being present with my daughter.
Mm.
Whatever job I had, like whatever happened circumstantially with my husband's job, because as a general surgeon, he's on call all the time, I can at least put my daughter as number one, because it doesn't feel selfish to put your children first. So it's kind of a safe bet for moms, I think. But it's also kind of like behind that, it puts mom as number two, because I have to be good too. I have to be fulfilled too. I have to be energized to take care of her. So those two kind of sway back and forth depending on the day. And then I consider, okay, then now that I'm able to prioritize what's going to work for my daughter and myself, then I look at my work. Because it used to be the other way around, where my work always came first. Like I had to do all the speaking engagements. I had to do all the conferences. I had to do all of these research papers. That used to be first. And my husband was like, you do a lot of stuff. Where do I play a role in all of this? And so it made me reorganize what life is really, truly about. Because when you take away your job, you get fired, you get terminated, you are put in weird situations where you don't have that job anymore, then what's left? It's not your title, it's not your certificates, it's your family. And so it took me a long time to mature and see the value of that. And so I think that's how I at least try to reorganize what I call boundaries, really is prioritizing as well.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I love what you said. I think what I'm taking away with from this is make sure that you as an individual are on that list of
Yeah.
priorities, really. And I think at the end of the day, these terms kind of weave into each other. Because when I'm talking about prioritizing sleep, I'm technically saying create space, create boundaries, figure out what is important. And then when you create that, then it helps you know when one thing starts and the other ends, right? And I think that's exactly what you're sharing here, which I think is really phenomenal. Another thing you talked about is be willing to reorganize it. So maybe there was a stage in your life where it felt like being productive and, being productive in the sense of writing or speaking was sort of like priority at that time because maybe there were not as many obligations, but being willing to say, okay, it seems like we're going to have to change the order of things and being okay with that. And other people around you being okay with that, I think is key. So I really love that.
Oh, it sounds easy, but it was really a journey to say, I am not my degree. I am not my work title. And I think a lot of us have a hard time pulling away from that because of how much we did invest in becoming to what we wanted to be, a physician. For us, it's 7+ years, whatever it turns out to be. That's an entire decade of opportunity where all of our other friends were just living their lives and making their income. And so I'm glossing it over as if it's easy. It's truly a journey of self-discovery, because you don't want to get into a situation where you do lose your job and your identity is tied up into that. And then what? And then you're not present for your family because you're depressed, you're burned out. So for me, that was really important to be present to my daughter every single day, drop her off at school, pick her up, have dinner, have small conversations, have play with her. That was always important.
That's beautiful. And those are just relationships that you'll never, like, it's the time goes. I mean, of course, even if you're at a point and if you're listening to this where it seems like maybe the order is a little bit different and it's causing some dissatisfaction, it's okay. You could start now. There's no best time to start than now. Like, yesterday is gone, whatever happened yesterday or previously is gone, but really starting to rearrange that order, I think you can start today, and that is fine. So what about that woman who's like, okay, this makes a lot of sense because this gives me the freedom to live the life that I really want to live without guilt. But then I'm also a recovering people pleaser. And you and I are in a coaching group where we talk about avoiders and restless people and things, but I'm a recovering people pleaser and I'm an avoider. I don't like drama. And I'm also a hyperachiever. Like, what kind of combination is that? So how do we move forward? Like, from someone who I feel like the world is just hitting me left, right, and center. I want to change. I want to be able to set boundaries, but I don't even recognize where to start.
I'm laughing because I resonate with all of that to some degree. Like, that's how we were trained. That's how we were raised. That's what's expected. So I totally get that. But I think I just got to a point where I was just kind of fed up. I was like, I am unfulfilled and I'm not being a good friend. I'm not being a good wife. I'm not being a good mother if I'm unfulfilled. And so I had to really do some self-reflection and say, am I doing what is truly going to be helpful for others? And the only way for that to happen is if I had met my needs first. So like today's needs, I need to make time to write. Otherwise, it is a jumbled mess in here and I'm not coherent. So I need time for myself, even if that time for myself is 10 minutes in the shower or, another like 10 minutes doing my hair or my makeup. Like, that's kind of meditative time where I just need this focused time to do this one thing and think about nothing else. And so I think if we get into the practice of just appreciating the small things that we have right in front of us, we don't have to buy a fancy massage package to enjoy time to ourselves. We can enjoy it as it is, like a sip of your coffee in the morning. Smell the aroma of the coffee. Does it smell different from a light roast, from a dark roast? Like, just enjoying the small things that we naturally pass by because we're in a rush trying to get to one place to another. I think if we just slow it down, we can find a lot of joy and value in those tiny little things. And I think I'm able to see this clearer because of how quickly my daughter has grown in the past 4 years, how much has transformed. When I look back at her pictures on my phone from a year ago, 2 years ago, like, it was like a blink of an eye. You blink once and she's 4 and she's talking back, It's like, and I've always made it a point where every single day I have to spend time with her, whether it be a goofy picture on the phone, on a silly app or something, or just having dinner. Like, I had to make sure that every single day I made an effort to make it count.
I love that. So I'm hearing a few things here, and I'm writing profusely because I think this is really going to be so helpful. I think the first thing is when you feel like you're so swamped that you don't even have time, like you said, to even process, to even say, okay, yeah, sure, boundaries, but it sounds really easy in theory. Like, how do we practicalize it? And I think what I'm hearing is, look at what's in your hand. You don't have to wait till you have like a whole weekend off to do some retreats in a very fancy place or whatever. Like, the time in the bathroom, like the time you spend doing what seems very mundane, where you have so much mind chatter, you lose sight of that moment. Like, take it back. And that's something within our control. And so I think that's such a beautiful place to start, because every time, even especially if you're at a point where you feel like I just hate everybody right now. I feel very resentful. Everybody's to blame. It's like, when you are able to quiet things down in those moments, then clarity starts to flow in, like, oh, wow, okay, I'm intentionally, enjoying this moment. And maybe then you could start to say, well, what are the things that don't, like you said, for writing, I love to write as well and just journal my thoughts. Like, what are the things right now that are not serving me that I could just eliminate real quick? And then you'll be able to start with that. But if you feel like, if you're looking at it and it's all this huge jumbo mumbo of like stuff, then it's hard to decipher what is what. It's hard to decipher what is right, important versus not, or whatever. But when you get clarity and you harness clarity from those moments of stillness, then you start to see the next step forward in creating space for yourself, in prioritizing the things that matter and preventing that overwhelm. And I'm going to tie it, of course, because this is a channel where we talk about all things sleep. And you might have been wondering, like, wait, how does this tie into sleep? Imagine being in a situation like this where your mind is just so cluttered because everybody has had an opportunity to get real estates in your mind. That's what I call it, like everybody's drama. You're taking that with you and taking it to bed. It's going to be hard to quiet your mind down to sleep. So when you build those moments of stillness, when you build those moments of just enjoying the time, the quiet, right? Even just shut the door so the kids don't barge in and disrupt 10 minutes. I'm sure they'll be fine, right? When you build that in, you start to process things better. You start to write, you start to kind of declutter. It makes a huge difference, especially for high achieving women whose minds are constantly going. It does make a huge difference in how well you do sleep at night. So I do love that a lot.
Wow. You're so captivating. What you had to say about clearing your mind, I completely agree. And I really want to speak on being a people pleaser, because I think that is one of the most toxic trait we can do to ourselves, is to continually worry about other people who may not worry about us at all. And
Yeah.
so we're allowing people to live rent free in our brain with no positive impact. But
Yeah.
we are so, the inner child or the inner voice in us is like, but we have to make them happy to make them like us and all of the things. But really, in reality, none of that matters. They don't care about what you're thinking. And that is just energy out of my little jar that doesn't add value, and it takes away from my family if I were to continually pour into other people who really aren't on my priority list. So I think just making a tangible list to say your opinions matter, and then these people's opinions don't matter, I think can make a difference for a lot of us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you'll be able to get rid of some toxic relationships that really are not feeding you or actually have been depleting you. So I think that's so powerful.
Yeah.
I think so. What are any other thoughts when it comes to just this whole process of starting to practically implement boundaries in our lives?
I think just recognizing that you need them is a really wonderful start. Because if you don't recognize that you need them, then you're just like, why am I doing all these little activities, exercise? Like, it doesn't make sense. But you have to make it make sense. Because if you have a limited amount of energy and you're every day constantly trying to please somebody all the time, what's left for the people who really matter at the end of the day when you go home to? Like, what's left for them, right? And so I think just starting with the recognition that, yeah, I should probably do something to refine that energy load so I have more to give to the people who do matter. So it's kind of like if you're online and you're reading posts and somebody has a random negative comment and you burn all your energy on that person, what's left at home? Not a whole lot. But what's better? You just scrolling by. You're like, oh, that's just a bot. That's an auto. Like, who cares, right? Honestly, who cares? So being able to create boundaries is not just a matter of, I don't want to talk to you anymore, you're consuming. It could just be, I don't want to answer your message immediately. Let me think about it and process and prioritize. and you don't have to react. Give it time to make sense for you. Because then maybe 10 minutes passes and you're like, that was really silly. I didn't need to spend energy on that. Just start really, really small.
Start really small and realize that it's critical. It's important for your health. It's important for your sleep. It's important for your entire well-being. So I love it, love it. So one quick question I have, and then we'll find out about where we could find you and learn from you. But one question I ask when I remember is, what gets you up in the morning? What gets your day started? What really motivates you to get out of bed?
The only thing that gets me out of bed is my bladder. So that will get me out of bed. So I probably need to recruit a urologist. I'm a very practical person. I'm not the one to wake up and dunk myself in cold freezing water to call it a day. No. Like today I woke up at 6 o'clock and I went to a hot Pilates class and I only made it through like 30 minutes. It was a 60-minute class. I was like, I just wanted to try something different today. That's what got me up this morning. Every day is a little bit different. And I don't have a set schedule. Like, you always read about people who have a regimen. I'm not that disciplined and I'm okay with that. So every day is a little bit different, and it's usually my daughter kicking me in the back because I still cohabitate with her.
So it sounds like a whole lot of fun there. So it could be your daughter.
Could be my daughter, it could be my bladder. It could just be sometimes it's me worried. Like, am I going to accomplish the things I need to do today? But I know that I need to do something is what gets me up. So it's just one step closer to my goal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's awesome. I love it. So this has been just incredible. I've had so much fun chatting with you. Where can people find you if they want to work with you and all that good stuff?
This material applies all across the board, whether it's serving my patients or helping other physicians. So if you kind of like the nonsense that sometimes I'm saying and you want to find more, I'm on Instagram at Dr. T Podiatry, and a lot of foot content in there, but a lot of practical stuff as well. And I sometimes post videos of 30 seconds of the beach because I live right by the beach to remind you about just taking a mindful moment for yourself. Even if it's 30 seconds, that might be all that you need for a moment. So find me there on Instagram.
I love that. That is beautiful. And we'll have this in the show notes. This has been incredible. I've had so much fun. Thank you so much for coming. And for you guys out there, I hope this has been valuable. Remember, boundaries are not a bad word. They're important for us to be the best version of ourselves. And I'm going to take this analogy of, think of it like a jar. It's finite, that energy. And so really prioritizing where and how you'll use it is so, so important. And so if this has been valuable, if this resonates with you at all, definitely share the video, comment, subscribe, and really let's know how this is resonating with you. All right. Until next time, rest well. And thank you so much again, Dr. T.
Oh, thank you so much. Bye.